The boardroom was packed that Tuesday morning when Mark Dalton destroyed me in front of everyone. I was halfway through my presentation on the quarterly strategy when he interrupted with a laugh that made my stomach drop. "This isn't 1998, Patricia. You'll never lead a team again if you keep thinking like that." The room went silent. 12 pairs of eyes looked away from me, embarrassed for me. I stood there frozen, my hands shaking around my notes, feeling 30 years of experience crumble into dust. Mark leaned back in his chair with that smug smile he wore like a crown. "Let's move on to someone with fresh ideas," he said, dismissing me with a wave. I gathered my papers, forced a smile that felt like glass cutting my face, and walked out. My heels clicked too loud on the tile floor. In the restroom, I stared at my reflection, tears threatening to spill. Then something shifted inside me. I gripped the sink and whispered, "That's the last time you talked to me like that." 6 months earlier, everything had been different. I remember the day Mark joined our company, walking through the office with corporate headquarters people, all charm and confidence. He'd stopped at my desk, shaken my hand warmly. "Patricia Lawson, right? I've heard you're the backbone of this place." I'd smiled, pleased someone finally noticed. Within 2 weeks, he'd asked to see my project reports, claiming he wanted to learn the systems. I'd handed them over, happy to help the new director. The following Monday, I sat in a meeting watching him present my analysis word for word as his own strategy. He never mentioned my name once. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he forgot to credit me. But then I overheard him on a phone call, door half open. "She's good for grunt work, but she's too old to innovate." I stood outside his office, those words burning into my memory. After that, things changed fast. Mark started excluding me from meetings I used to lead. The weekly strategy sessions I'd run for 5 years suddenly didn't need me. "We're streamlining," he explained when I asked. My ideas started appearing credited to younger staff members. When I raised concerns, Mark smiled and said, "We need to give others opportunities to shine." I went to HR, explained the situation carefully. The woman behind the desk nodded sympathetically but did nothing. "It's just new management adjustments," she said. "Give it time." I gave it time. 3 months of watching my work vanish, my voice disappear, my role shrink. Then one afternoon, my coworker Amanda pulled me aside in the break room. She looked nervous, kept glancing at the door. "Patricia, he's setting you up," she whispered. "I saw your name removed from the Anderson project file. He's listing himself as lead." My blood went cold. That project was mine from the beginning. The breaking point came during a client presentation. We'd been working on the Henderson account for months, staying late, perfecting every detail. The presentation was scheduled for Friday. On Thursday afternoon, Mark sent an email moving it to Wednesday morning without telling me. I arrived Wednesday to find the conference room empty, the presentation already over. Mark called me into his office, looking disappointed. "You missed the Henderson presentation, Patricia. The client was confused by your absence." I stared at him. "You changed the date." "I sent an email," he said smoothly. "Maybe check your inbox more carefully. This is exactly why I'm concerned about your attention to detail." He reported my missed deadline to upper management. That night, I stayed late, searching through my email. Found the original schedule, the last-minute change, everything proving he'd set me up. I saved every message to a personal folder. Evidence. Just in case. I sat in my car that night, hands on the steering wheel, deciding who I wanted to be. I could quit, walk away, let Mark win. Or I could fight back. But not with anger. Not with confrontation. With something better. Strategy. Patience. Documentation. I drove home and opened my laptop. Created a new folder labeled just in case. Started copying emails, saving reports with timestamps, documenting every project I worked on. No arguments. No outbursts. Just quiet, careful collection of facts. Mark thought I was defeated. He thought his dismissal had broken me. But he'd actually done something else. He'd shown me exactly who he was. And people who show you their true nature are giving you a gift, even if it doesn't feel like it. I made myself a promise that night. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't complain. I would simply do my job so well, so thoroughly, so undeniably, that when the time came, the truth would speak louder than any words. I started mentoring the younger staff privately, the ones Mark ignored because they weren't flashy enough. Kyle from data analysis, struggling with complex reports. Bethany in marketing, brilliant but overlooked. James in finance, hungry to learn. I'd stay late helping them, teaching them what I knew, asking nothing in return. They started coming to me with questions Mark couldn't answer, problems he didn't understand. Within weeks, I'd built a quiet network of people who trusted me more than him. One evening, Kyle stopped by my desk. "If you ever ran this place," he whispered, glancing toward Mark's office, "I'd actually enjoy coming to work." I smiled. "Thanks, Kyle. That means a lot." But inside, something was building. Not anger anymore. Something colder. More focused. I was becoming the person they needed, even if nobody saw it yet. Mark was so busy taking credit and climbing the ladder that he never noticed the foundation crumbling beneath him. Mark launched a massive product initiative in March, the kind that could make or break a director's career. He called it Project Phoenix, assembled a team of young executives, all eager to impress. Then he assigned me as support staff, not even a team member. Support. I read the project plan he distributed and found a critical flaw in the second phase. The vendor timeline didn't match our production schedule. We'd missed the launch window by 3 weeks, maybe more. It would cost millions. I thought about pointing it out, but Mark had made it clear my opinions weren't welcome. So I waited, watched him present the plan to executives with complete confidence, watched them approve everything, praising his bold vision. After the meeting, I approached him carefully. "Mark, I noticed a timeline concern in phase 2. He didn't even look up from his phone. It's handled, Patricia. Don't worry about things above your level." I worked nights for 6 weeks, quietly fixing Mark's mistakes. Contacted vendors directly, adjusted schedules, solved problems before they became disasters. Never told anyone. Never asked for recognition. Just did the work because I couldn't watch a project fail, even if the credit would never be mine. Project Phoenix launched perfectly. The executive team was thrilled. Mark became the golden boy overnight. At the celebration lunch, the COO, Mr. Harrison, shook Mark's hand. "Outstanding work. You might be next in line for VP." Mark soaked it up, giving a speech about vision and innovation. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not in his presentation. Not in the celebration. Not anywhere. But I noticed something. People on my team kept glancing at me. They knew who'd really made it work. James caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you." I smiled faintly. The truth was building, even if Mark couldn't see it. I just had to wait. Mark's ego grew bigger after Phoenix. He started making changes just to show power. Reorganized email lists, excluding me from company-wide updates. Then the whisper started. "Patricia's losing touch. She's burnt out. Maybe it's time for her to retire." I heard them in the break room, in hallway conversations that stopped when I appeared. Mark was building a narrative, making me invisible. 2 weeks later, HR scheduled a performance review meeting. I knew what it was. An ambush. Mark was going to push me out. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. 30 years at this company. I'd trained half the people here. Now they were ready to discard me because some young director needed to prove himself. But I wasn't going quietly. I spent the whole night preparing. Printed every email, every project report, every client testimonial. Built a binder of evidence, so thick it barely fit in my bag. When I walked into that HR office, I was ready for war. Mark sat across from me in the HR office, looking confident. The HR director, Ms. Chun, sat between us with her notebook. "Patricia, we've received concerns about your adaptability to new systems," she began. Mark jumped in. "She's resistant to change, stuck in old methods. It's affecting team morale." I listened quietly, hands folded. Let him talk. Let him think he'd won. When he finished, I opened my binder, slid copies across the table. "These are my project contributions from the last year. Timestamped, signed off by clients, with measurable results." Miss Chun started reading. Her expression changed. The Henderson account closure, the Phoenix launch corrections, the vendor negotiations. She looked at Mark. "These all show Patricia as the primary contributor." Mark's confident smile faltered. "She's support staff. Of course she contributed. These documents show her as project lead on most initiatives." Miss Chen's voice was cold now. Mark tried to argue, but his words sounded hollow. The evidence didn't lie. Mark left that meeting furious. For 2 days, he avoided me completely. Then the rumors started getting worse. Patricia's planning to retire. She's been offered a package. She's done here. My workload mysteriously shrank. Projects I'd been leading got reassigned without explanation. It was Mark's retaliation, crude and obvious. But something else happened. The senior engineer, Peter, stopped me in the parking garage. He's rewriting project history, Peter said quietly. Putting his name on your patents. The thermal efficiency design you developed? He filed it under his name last week. I felt sick. Not just credit theft anymore. Legal theft. Intellectual property. I drove to the patent office that afternoon, pulled records, found 3 designs I'd created all filed under Mark's name. My hands shook as I made copies. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was fraud. And fraud left trails. I started digging deeper. Stayed late accessing company archives, old financial reports, audit trails. Found something buried in the third quarter review. Financial discrepancies in Mark's department. Missing invoices, duplicated expenses, payments that didn't match records. I cross-referenced everything. The missing invoices all aligned with Mark's team outings. Expensive dinners, golf weekends, hotel stays charged to company accounts. Thousands of dollars, maybe more. I made copies of everything. Added them to my growing folder. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. About protecting the company from someone who was stealing from it. I thought about going to HR directly. But Mark had allies there. I needed someone higher. Someone who couldn't be influenced. Then I remembered. Victoria Hayes. The VP I trained 15 years ago, now working at corporate headquarters. Victoria owed me everything. Maybe it was time to collect. I called Victoria on a Friday afternoon, keeping my voice casual. Just checking in. How's headquarters treating you? We talked about nothing for a few minutes. Then she asked about my work. I mentioned casually how things had changed under Mark's leadership. The chaos, the confusion, the projects that barely survived. Interesting timing, Victoria said slowly. We're reviewing regional leadership for restructuring. Some departments aren't performing as well as they claim. My heart raced. Restructuring? Can't share details yet, but keep your eyes open. Sometimes change comes from unexpected places. We hung up. I sat staring at my phone, realizing what she just told me. Corporate was watching. They knew something was wrong. They just needed proof. And I had a folder full of it, growing heavier every day. Mark thought he'd buried me. He had no idea he'd actually given me the perfect opportunity to expose everything he'd done. I kept working like nothing had changed. Helped everyone, even Mark. Smiled. Stayed pleasant. Played the role of the harmless older woman just trying to get through the day. But underneath, I was building alliances. Every person I'd mentored now trusted me completely. They came to me with problems, bypassing Mark entirely. When his decisions created messes, I quietly cleaned them up. Not for him. For the team. For the company. 3 weeks after my call with Victoria, I received a private email. We'll be in Denver next month. Keep your records ready. That was it. No details. No explanation. But I understood. Corporate was coming. And they wanted evidence. I spent that night organizing everything. Financial discrepancies. Stolen credit. Patent fraud. Every email. Every document. Every piece of proof. By midnight, I had a presentation that could destroy Mark's career. The question was whether I had the courage to deliver it. Mark sensed something shifting. He started acting paranoid, asking who'd been talking to headquarters. Nobody answered him. He began micromanaging everything, demanding updates, changing decisions last minute. It made him sloppy. One afternoon, he approved a vendor payment without reading it carefully. It was a duplicate. The same invoice paid twice, $14,000. I flagged it in my records, sent a quiet note to finance. Possible duplication in vendor payments. Might want a review. Finance caught it before the payment processed. But the mistake was documented now. Another crack in Mark's perfect image. He was unraveling. The pressure was getting to him. He'd built his success on stolen work and fraud. Now that people were watching, he couldn't keep up the illusion. I watched him spiral, feeling no satisfaction. Just cold certainty that this would end only one way. A confidential audit request landed in our office in late April. External auditors coming to review departmental finances. Mark panicked. He knew what they'd find. He stormed into my cubicle one afternoon, face red with anger. "You've been sabotaging me. Talking to people, spreading lies. I know it was you." Everyone in the office heard him shouting. Saw him losing control. "You're done here, Patricia. Finished. You'll never work in this industry again." I sat calmly, looking up at him. Let him rage. Let everyone see who he really was. When he finally ran out of words, I said quietly, "Are you done?" He stared at me, breathing hard. Realized everyone was watching. Walked away without another word. That night, Amanda told me, "Everyone's talking about it. How he lost it on you. People are starting to ask questions." Good. Let them ask. The truth was coming, whether Mark was ready or not. The auditors arrived on a Monday. Professional, efficient, asking careful questions. They interviewed everyone in the department, reviewing files, comparing records. When they called me in, I was ready. I didn't offer opinions. Didn't badmouth Mark. Just provided clean, factual data. Showed them the original records, the timeline of events, the documented proof of irregularities. The lead auditor, a woman named Mrs. Foster, reviewed everything silently. Then she looked up, her expression neutral. "You just saved us $1 million loss." I blinked. What? These discrepancies would have been approved next quarter. Nobody caught them. Nobody except you. She closed her file. "Thank you for your diligence." After she left, I sat in my cubicle feeling strange. Not victorious. Just tired. 30 years of work had come down to this. Protecting a company from a man who tried to destroy me. But the audit was just beginning. And Mark's world was about to collapse. Mark tried throwing me under the bus one last time. Told the auditors I was difficult, that I'd been resistant to proper procedures. Said my record-keeping was obsessive and inappropriate. But HR and finance had already seen my evidence. They knew I'd been protecting the company, not sabotaging it. The auditors recommended Mark take a few days off while they completed their review. He left on a Thursday looking pale. Defeated. The office felt lighter without him. People started talking openly about the problems they'd been hiding. How Mark had pressured them to falsify reports. How he'd taken credit for their work. How he'd created a culture of fear. I listened but didn't participate. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about healing. About rebuilding what Mark had broken. That weekend, Victoria called. "Pack your professional clothes. We need you in Denver on Monday." "What's happening?" I asked. "You'll see. Trust me." Monday morning, I flew to Denver. Corporate headquarters was massive, intimidating. Victoria met me in the lobby, professional but warm. "Ready." The meeting room was full of executives I'd only seen in company photos. Regional directors, VPs, the CEO. My stomach twisted. What had I walked into? Victoria stood. "Everyone, this is Patricia Lawson. She's been with the company 30 years. She's the reason we caught the discrepancies in the Denver office before they became a legal nightmare." The CEO nodded at me. "We've reviewed your documentation. Impressive work." They asked questions for 2 hours. About Mark, about the department, about what needed to change. I answered honestly, carefully. When the meeting ended, Victoria walked me out. "We're restructuring Denver leadership. We need someone stable. Someone who knows how things really work." She handed me a badge. My name. Under the title Interim Director. I stared at it, unable to speak. Mark found out that Wednesday. Called me 20 times before I finally answered. "What did you do?" His voice was shaking. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," I said simply. "Just the truth. You destroyed me. You turned everyone against me." I stayed quiet. Let him rant. "I made this department. Without me it falls apart. Without me you're nothing." "Mark," I interrupted. "The auditors found the financial discrepancies. IT found the falsified reports. You destroyed yourself." He hung up. That night, he sent an email. "You'll regret this. You're nothing without me." I didn't reply, just forwarded the message to HR as evidence of harassment. By morning, another piece had fallen into place. IT had been investigating deleted emails from Mark's computer, found messages showing he deliberately inflated success numbers to make his department look more profitable. Fraud. Clear and documented. Victoria called. They want you on the termination review committee. My hand trembled holding the phone. Why me? Because you earned it. The evidence kept piling up. Mark had falsified quarterly reports for 8 months. Claimed projects were complete when they weren't. Reported earnings that didn't exist. Every lie was documented in emails he thought he deleted. IT recovered everything. The legal team explained it to me in detail. Financial fraud, intellectual property theft, misuse of company resources. Any one charge could end his career. Together, they meant potential criminal investigation. I sat in the conference room reading through everything, feeling numb. This man had tried to destroy me, had humiliated me, stolen from me, pushed me toward quitting. Now his entire life was collapsing, and I was the one who'd started the avalanche. Patricia! Victoria touched my shoulder. You okay? I don't feel victorious, I admitted. That's because you're decent, she said. Mark would be celebrating your destruction. You're just doing what's right. I nodded, signed off on the review recommendation. Termination for cause. Immediate. No severance. The day before Mark's termination hearing, he cornered me in the hallway. The office was nearly empty, most people gone for the day. Patricia, wait! His voice was different now. Desperate. I stopped but didn't turn around. This is a huge mistake, he said. You think you're helping the company, but you're just making yourself look bitter. Like a jealous old woman who couldn't handle change. I turned slowly, looked at him, really looked at him. He was younger than me, handsome, educated. He'd had every advantage, and he'd used them all to tear people down instead of building them up. No, Mark, I said calmly. You did. His face twisted. What? You made the mistake. Every lie, every stolen project, every falsified report. Those were your choices. I walked away, leaving him standing alone in the empty hallway. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow would end this. Tomorrow, justice would finally arrive. The termination hearing began at 9 in the morning. Conference room sealed, 3 executives present, HR documenting everything. Mark sat across the table, his lawyer beside him. He tried to argue, said the reports were misunderstood, the patents were collaborative work, the expenses were approved by someone else. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails in his own words, financial records with his signature, testimony from team members he'd intimidated. Mr. Dalton, the lead executive said, we have documentation of 8 separate policy violations, including financial fraud and intellectual property theft. Mark's lawyer leaned over, whispered something. Mark's face went white. You're terminated for cause, effective immediately. The executive slid papers across the table. The final authorization requires the interim director's signature. He looked at me. Everyone looked at me. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 18 months. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady as I signed. Patricia Lawson, interim director. I slid the paper across the table to Mark. He stared at it, then at me, speechless. The man who'd humiliated me in front of everyone. Who'd stolen my work, my credit, my dignity. Now sitting across from me, watching me sign the letter that ended his career. You told me I'd never lead a team, I said quietly. The room was silent. Everyone listening. Turns out I just led yours. Right out the door. Mark's face crumbled. His lawyer started to speak, but Mark held up a hand. He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. I underestimated you, he whispered. Yes, I agreed. You did. Security came to escort him out. He stood slowly, gathering his things. At the door, he turned back one last time. I met his gaze steadily. Felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that justice had been served. The door closed. He was gone. I walked back to my office, the one that used to be Mark's. My team was waiting. They'd heard the news somehow. Office gossip traveled fast. They applauded softly as I passed. Not cheering, not celebrating someone's destruction. Just acknowledging that things would be different now. Better. I sat at my desk and pulled out the old folder. Just in case. Everything I documented. Every email, every report, every piece of evidence. I held it for a moment, then filed it away. Closed. The new executive VP called that afternoon. Patricia, we'd like to discuss making your interim position permanent. I'd be honored, I replied. That evening, I sent an email to the entire team. Leadership isn't about power. It's not about control or credit or climbing over others. It's about grace, especially when you finally win. 30 years at this company, 2 years of hell. And finally, I was exactly where I belonged. Leading. Not because I destroyed someone, but because I never let someone destroy me.